In this month's DVD, we're going to be talking about cancer, which is a subject that is particularly close to my heart. I lost my father, I'm trying to think now, probably 16, 17 years ago through liver and pancreatic cancer. My father-in-law died a year or two before that from lung cancer. Our children grew up without grandfathers, sadly. And over the years, it's been the one thing that probably drives me more than anything else. When I hear of somebody who has cancer, I so badly want to help them. But I've realized that I can't actually help anybody with cancer. They have to help themselves. Right. We are, as we said in the introduction, speaking about cancer. It is a subject, as I've mentioned, very close to my heart, having lost family members due to it. And so I think we need to start firstly is what is cancer, what actually happens, and then let's look at the dietary factors. Let's look at what you can do to prevent this condition, what you can do to undo the damage, because you can undo most of the damage. I've seen people in advanced stages of so-called incurable cancer, like liver cancer, recover dramatically, and now 15 years later they're still in total remission and are considered cured of these incurable forms of cancer. So I believe greatly. I've just seen too many people recover dramatically from cancer by changing their diets, to ignore it. And when you start reading the research, it's very clear that there's a lot that you can actually do. So what is cancer? Cancer is a state of cellular growth which occurs when normal cells become abnormal and continue to grow abnormally without apparent control, and in the process destroys healthy cells and tissues. Cancer kills more people in westernized countries than any other disease other than heart disease. Heart disease is number one, number two is cancer. But the growth of cancer, death by cancer, is growing faster than the growth of death by heart disease. Heart disease deaths are, although it's still number one, the growth portion of it is slowing down, whereas cancer is increasing. So what we have to do is look at what are the factors that affect it. People will tell you it's stress and it's pollution. But when you look at research such as published in the China study, it's very clear that diet is a huge factor, absolutely huge factor. So that's what we're going to look at. We find that many of these people call cancer the disease of civilization. Wherever there is advanced civilization, where we have fast food outlets and we have chain stores and we have junk foods and packaged foods, that's where we get cancer. And the more processed the diet, the more cancer. The higher the protein content in the diet, the higher the cancer rate. So we're going to look at a whole bunch of factors. Probably the most comprehensive study ever done in the field of cancer is what they call the Grand Prix of nutritional studies, which was the China study. People that promote high protein diets make wild statements like the study was flawed, yet they're unable to show where those flaws are. The people that wrote and were involved in the China study, probably the most well-known is Dr. Colin Campbell, have nothing to gain financially from the study. They don't promote any nutritional products. They don't sell anything. They don't have a website that makes you pay for anything. And in fact, I know the China study website was put up by the publisher of the book, not by Dr. Colin Campbell himself. He has nothing to do with it. So let's just take a look at what kind of study that was, so we can understand how unflawed the study actually was. Firstly, this study was initiated by the Premier of China, who himself had suffered from cancer, and he wanted scientists to look at what caused cancer, and so they studied initially the Chinese people. And what they did is they recorded information from 2,400 different Chinese counties 880 million people, which is 96% of the citizens of China at the time. It was a remarkable survey. It involved, I mean, just in collecting information, there were 650,000 workers. And based on that, what they found was that there were certain counties that had higher rates of cancer than others, and some of them vastly higher. And they wanted to know, what was it? And what made this China study so unique, this is the introduction to the China study, what the premier instigated, was that the Chinese government was so actively involved. They wanted to have answers. The Chinese people appear to have a very different approach to disease. It appears that doctors are paid to keep people well, not to cure them from illness. So they look for ways to keep people healthy, not things to give them to make them recover. So what happened is they actually encouraged this huge study, and the 3 universities got together. Well, 2 universities. Was Oxford University with Sir Richard Peto. He was knighted for the work that he did in the UK. We had Dr. Colin Campbell, and then of course we had the Chinese Academy of Medicine, Preventative Medicine, and so what they did was they did this enormous study involving 100 counties, 65 counties with 100 people from each county initially, and the study grew from then. It was initially 6,500 people, and then it eventually was over 10,000 people. It took at least 10 years. They were just going to be looking at cancer, but they found a whole lot of other statistics to do with diabetes and heart disease and everything else. But we're interested in cancer here. What did Dr. Colin Campbell find? And this is what's so amazing, is that the counties and the people that consumed more plant food, just to break it down really quickly, had much less cancer than those consuming more protein. And that the average American person consumed large quantities of protein compared to the big meat eaters in China. So they thought initially it might be genetic, that perhaps the Chinese had some amazing gene that protected them against cancer. And so they studied Chinese people who had moved to the United States of America and looked at the incidence of cancer there. And the incidence of cancer amongst the Chinese community that consumed a typical American diet were exactly the same as the American people. There was no difference between Chinese people living in America and Americans, but there was a big difference between Chinese people living in America and those living in rural China. So, how do we turn off cancer? What actually triggers it? What I love about Dr. Colin Campbell, he takes things that even I have sort of kind of stood for and said, well, you know, there's carcinogenic substances in hot dog meat, for example, like nitrites and nitrates. And I have read research where scientists say it's not how much cancer they're going to cause. It's not whether or not they're going to cause cancer in the body. It's how much are they going to cause, and will your lifestyle and diet protect you from triggering the cancer. So I love the way that Dr. Colin Campbell actually is quite outspoken about it. He says, yes, there are many chemicals that are highly carcinogenic, many. But in the studies that they did, which was so fascinating, is they started initially with rats and mice before they even looked at the people. They took rats and mice, different groups of them, and at different universities and control centers, and they put them on a high aflatoxin diet. Now, aflatoxin is from the mold that's found on peanuts, and it's considered a highly carcinogenic substance. It's considered a huge cause of liver cancer, for example, major contributor to cancer. And everybody will tell you to stay away from aflatoxins. So they took the aflatoxins, they gave them to a group of rats and mice. I think initially they were using mice, and they gave them a low protein diet, below 5% animal protein. The protein they used was whey powder from cow's milk, which is fascinating because it wasn't actually flesh. And what they found is that the rats on the high aflatoxin levels got no cancer when they were on a low protein diet. But the rats that were on low aflatoxin levels or no aflatoxin levels, many of them, the percentage was huge, got cancer. In fact, I think they found that most of them got, over a period of time, if their protein intake went over 20%. Now, 20% of calories. In fact, it wasn't 20%, was considerably more, but once it went over 5%, these mice actually started to get cancer. So it was a fascinating study that they did with the mice. I'm not a proponent of doing research on rats and mice like this, but I can't fault their studies in this instance. And so they proved that aflatoxin, by doing these studies, didn't actually cause the cancer. Well, I love the way Dr. Colin Campbell calls it. He says it doesn't trigger the cancer. It may damage, aflatoxins may damage cells, but they won't multiply and proliferate until there's a high protein intake. Now listen to the way he explains this. It's absolutely wonderful. He talks about the 3 stages of cancer. He says cancer proceeds through 3 stages: initiation, promotion, and progression. He says the best way to describe this is to say it's like growing grass. Initiation is when you put the seeds in the soil. Promotion is when the grass starts to grow. And progression is when the grass gets completely out of control, invading the driveway and the shrubbery and the sidewalk, okay? So what is the process that successfully implants the grass seed in the soil in the first place? Okay? Initiation very often is caused by chemicals like aflatoxins, nitrites and nitrates found in hot dog meat, heated fats, processed foods, chemicals found in the westernization and the processing of foods, whether it's frying or cooking, or for example when you cook meat, there are carcinogenic substances called, goodness sake, wonderful names like polycystic aromatic hydrocarbons. Wonderful research done by Professor Walter Veit in his book Diet and Disease, and he talks about polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs, and the most common of them is known as benzopyrene, which is a potent carcinogen which is also formed in foodstuffs that are smoke dried, such as tea and smoked salmon, for example, and smoking and grilling of animal foods cause these benzopyrenes to form. Incidentally, what I do know is that the antioxidant that's found in the sprouted leaves of dark green leafy vegetables, and I don't want to leave this out because I've just thought of it, superoxide dismutase is a very powerful antioxidant which actually helps to neutralize these benzopyrenes. So if you do eat animal protein and you do eat cooked food, make sure you have a lot of the leaves of the sprouted grains, like the wheatgrass juice, the barley grass juice. And as I said, I take the barley grass juice because it's got the highest levels of superoxide dismutase out of all the sprouted leaves, so why bother with anything else? And I use Ames Barley Life for that, and you know, you can go onto our website and find out where to get that. But it's a wonderful way, and I don't eat animal protein anymore, so I'm using it just for carcinogenic things in the air, and breathing in toxic fumes, and just being exposed to basic toxins living in the world we live in today, okay? So there's these amazing, you know, we can go on about heterocyclic amines. They've been found to cause carcinogenity in the liver and the lungs. They are found again in meat and fish, even if they're cooked at low temperatures. We very often think it's red meat, but in fact, in this instance, these highly carcinogenic substances are found even in fish when it's cooked at low temperatures. Okay, another one of these very powerful compounds is the nitroso compounds. They've been linked to human cancers of the esophagus, stomach, bladder, and possibly lung. Beer, as well as nitrite-cured meat products, especially bacon after frying, salt-dried or smoked fish, are major sources of these compounds. Mainstream smoke from one cigarette contains up to 65 international units of volatile nitrous amines, and the side stream smoke contains up to 1,000. 1,000. So the smoker gets 65 international units of the nitroso compounds, and the side stream smoke, those are the children in the family, the wife or the husband, they are the ones that get 1,000. Now, I grew up in a smoking home, so I was getting, you know, more than 10 times than my parents were getting. I have a very good friend, Sue Burnham King, whose mother died of lung cancer, and she never smoked in her life, but she grew up with 2 parents that smoked. Now, I'm not sitting here saying blame your parents, because there are things that you can do to protect yourself. Those carcinogenic substances are there, they've damaged the cells, you're going to be more at risk. Somebody who's grown up in a smoking home, he's eaten fast foods, fried foods, you're going to be more at risk because the damage has been done, but the growth may not have taken place. So listen carefully, because it's the initiation. The seeds have been planted in the soil. They're just sitting there waiting, okay? These carcinogenic substances, whether they're from cigarette smoke, science stream, or mainstream, from heated fats, processed foods, those are like planting the seeds in the soil, okay? Right. The carcinogens genetically transform or mutate normal cells into cancer-prone cells. A mutation involves permanent alteration of the genes of the cells with damage to its DNA. Here you've got it. Genetic. When doctors tell you something's genetic, it's because something you've done has damaged the DNA in your body. It's not something you've inherited from your parents. Seldom, if ever, do I find genetic diseases in the grandparents or in the parents, just in the child. So you're doing something that's damaged your genetic code, such as smoking cigarettes and consuming fried foods. And I don't want to point fingers here. I just want to point you in the right direction and show you that it's easy to damage our DNA. I did. I used to eat horrible, greasy fried foods. It's by the grace of God that I had 3 healthy children. And my kids, as health conscious as they grew up, they smoked and drank and ate things that were not ideal. And it's by God's grace that we've got 4 healthy grandchildren. But they are now making changes to make sure that their children are staying well. So this is the most amazing thing. Even though you've done the damage to the DNA, the changes that you make to your diet is what's going to make the difference, okay? This entire initiation stage can take place in a very short period of time, even minutes. It is the time required for the chemical carcinogen to be consumed, absorbed into the bloodstream, transported into the cells, changed into its active product, bonded to the DNA, and passed on to the daughter cells. When the new daughter cells are formed, the process is complete. These daughter cells and all their progeny will forever be genetically damaged, giving rise to potential for cancer. Okay? Except in rare instances, completion of the initiation phase is considered irreversible. Okay? So the damage is done, but you can keep it isolated for your entire lifetime and still live. Okay? At this point in our lawn analogy, the grass seeds have been put into the soil and are ready to germinate. Initiation is complete. The second growth stage is called promotion. Like seeds ready to sprout blades of grass and turn into a green lawn, our newly formed cancer cell prone cells are ready to grow and multiply until they become visibly detectable. And they become visibly detectable, obviously, as cancer. This stage occurs over a far longer period of time than initiation, often many years for humans. It's when the newly initiated cluster multiplies and grows into larger and larger masses, and that you find a clinically visible tumor is formed. Okay? But just like seeds in the soil, the initiation cancer cells will not grow and multiply unless the right conditions are met. And this is the key, is to make sure that the right conditions for those cells to multiply are not there. And that's where you have control. That's where you can make the difference. And this is the good news. Promotion is reversible, Dr. Colin Campbell says, depending on whether the early cancer growth is given the right conditions in which to grow. These dietary factors, this is where dietary factors become so important. And it's these dietary factors called promoters that feed the cancer growth. The third phase or progression begins when a bunch of advanced cancer cells progress in their growth until they have done their final damage. It is like the fully grown lord invading everything, the sidewalk, the driveway, cracking the concrete. Similarly, a developing cancer tumor may wander away from its initial site in the body and invade a neighboring or distant organ or tissues. When the cancer takes on these deadly properties, it is considered malignant, and you call it metastasizing, when it moves from one place to another. So when you have complete metastases of the liver, it's because it's come from somewhere else, very often from the lymphatic system or from the uterus. If it's a woman, depends, okay? At the start of our research, the stages of cancer formation were known only in a vague outline. But we knew enough. Okay, take that out. Sorry, Mark. All right, so how does the protein intake affect cancer initiation? This is what was interesting. Because what they found in all their research, the carcinogenic substances were there, but the thing that actually initiates, the thing that causes cancer to progress from the seeds being planted to it just spreading everywhere, is protein intake. And when your protein intake goes above 5%, particularly animal protein, they found that if your protein intake in plant protein went above 5%, even over 20%, it did not promote cancer at all. It was animal protein that did it. Animal protein found in cow's milk, in cheese, in yogurt, all these so-called health foods, in fish, in chicken, in meat. So it wasn't just, protein in red meat, which is what so many people think, okay? We can read all of these books. And in fact, I recommend that you do read them. The China study is probably, as I said, the biggest, most comprehensive, most esteemed, most recognized study done on cancer. It categorically shows that the more protein you consume, the faster cancer will grow and the more chance you have of developing it. In fact, they found that a low protein diet actually prevents the seeds from being planted in the grass. So even though you have carcinogenic substances in pollution and in some of the foods, if your diet is low in protein, they're not likely to even get planted in the first place, which is quite phenomenal. So the protein factor is a huge factor, huge factor. What I do want to share with you is some of the most recent up-to-date research. And when I say up-to-date, the China study is an enormous study that is pretty up-to-date. It was completed in 91, but a lot of the research only started coming out. The China study book was only published in 2005, 2006. So they had to kind of sift through all of this information. But while I was recently in the United States, and I'm on my way back there now, the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research have come out with some statistics that are wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And so I'm going to read some of them to you. There are 9 points. And the first one is, be as lean as possible. Normal is okay, but you actually want to be on the lower end of the normal range of the body mass index. And this is interesting. A number that relates your weight to your height. Aim for a BMI, body mass index, of 21 to 23. For a man 6 foot tall, that's about 162 pounds. To help you lose weight efficiently and as naturally as possible, I suggest you read my book, Perfect Weight, which focuses on getting healthy and getting your endocrine system working properly, because it's when the endocrine system is not functioning efficiently that you will start to put on weight and your body will be out of balance. When you get the endocrine system working properly, it's just weight just starts to fall off if you're overweight, okay? You can also get onto the 100 Days to Health program. We've had wonderful emails from people all over the world saying they're on day 14 and day 40 and day 54 and 64 and 84 of the 100 Days to Health, and they've lost weight and they're feeling absolutely wonderful. Be active. Number 2, be active. There's no getting around it. You need 60 minutes or more of moderate exercise or 30 minutes of vigorous physical exercise every day. Right, point number 2, and that is to be active. There's no way getting around it. You need 60 minutes or more of moderate exercise or 30 minutes of vigorous physical exercise every day. Now, I write about this in just about all of my books. On the 100 Days to Health program, which is our online program, we get you into an exercise program very slowly. The best type of exercise I believe you can do is brisk walking. Do it anywhere, anytime, anyhow. And in my book, Take Control, I talk about how it deals with stress. It's essential. Exercise regulates 18 different hormones, and all of them have an effect on your immune system. So you have to exercise. You don't have a choice. So be as lean as possible, be active. 3, avoid energy-dense foods and sugary drinks. Those are the processed foods. This means cut way back on high-calorie fast foods, sodas, cakes, cookies, the treaty, sweetie, the fatty, fried, the fast foods, those are your calorie-dense foods. And it's a strange way of putting it. I would have put it on fried and processed foods, really, but I suppose they're just trying to be different, okay? 4, eat mostly plant foods. Shoot for 5 portions of non-starchy fruits and vegetables every day. Now, this is not my research. This is the research done by the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research. So aim for 5 portions of non-starchy fruits and vegetables every day. What is a portion? Whatever fits into your loosely cupped hand. A big apple or 2 small apples. A big bunch of grapes or 2 small bunches. 2 or 3 bananas. That's a portion. It is a lot of fruit and vegetables. And there's only one way you're going to get this right. And that's to follow the first 3 steps that I talk about in my books. All 5 steps will help you, but the first 3 steps increase your fruit and vegetable intake, and they're all incorporated in 100 days. In week 1 you do step 1, and I think in week 2 you do step 3 and 2 and so on. But those steps are so easy. Start all your cooked meals with some raw vegetables. Start your breakfast in the morning with a plate of fresh fruit first. Snack on fresh fruits and vegetables in between. Try and have at least 1 fruit meal every single day of your life. Include a handful of nuts or seeds. That's basically the 3 steps. But what you need to be aiming for is lots of color in your fruit and vegetables. The deeper the red, the orange, the greener the green, all of that. Make sure that you have at least 1 portion of dark green leafy vegetables in your diet every day. And here I come back to the sprouted leaves of grains, the wheatgrass juice, the barley grass juice. And as I said, I consume barley grass juice because it's way more nutritious and tastes a whole lot better than your wheatgrass juice, okay? All of my books, Perfect Health, The Natural Way, Perfect Weight, Take Control, Healthy Kids, my 2 recipe books, Recipe Book 1 and 2, all of them will help you get more plant food in your diet and have fun at the same time. You don't have to eat boring bean sprouts and carrot sticks. You really don't. Okay, you have no excuse anymore, actually. You don't have an excuse. There's so much research telling us what to do. My books tell you how to do it, and they make it really easy. I've just seen so many thousands of people's lives transformed. So many people have reversed cancer. It's been wonderful to see. Right. 5, back off the red meat. Now, this is not my research, it's somebody else. Dr. Colin Campbell says any animal protein, including cow's milk, yogurt and cheese, fish, chicken, eggs, okay? He says all of that. Here, they've done research and they say that you should not be eating more than 500 grams, which is like a block of butter, or 18 ounces a week of animal protein in your diet on a weekly basis. 18 ounces is very little. 500 grams is a block of butter or margarine, hopefully not margarine, block of butter. It's very little, and that's why in one of my steps I said don't eat more than 1 portion of animal protein a day. A portion is not more than the palm of your hand, that thick and that big. I'm not including the fingers, okay? So it's just that big. That would be 1 egg, 1 piece of chicken. It's very little. High protein diets, besides promoting cancer, we know really cause serious problems to the thyroid gland and the endocrine or hormonal system. So it's not a smart thing. Number 6, limit alcohol. It's 2 drinks a day tops for men and 1 for women. I've seen research that says if you're consuming more than 4 liters or more of wine in a month, which is 1 wine glass a day, you stand a more than 30% greater chance of developing breast cancer. So in my book, I'd stick to 1 glass a weekend if you were going to. I personally do not consume alcohol because it makes me pretty crazy and depressed, so I don't go there. Avoid salty foods. Salts can cause stomach cancer, large quantities of salt, so be wary of highly processed salt-infused foods, such as dried meats, for example, cured foods. Some processed foods don't seem very salty, such as bread or cereal, can actually have high levels of salt in it to give them flavor. It's one of the main reasons I actually developed our salts that we have. People say to me, why have you got these salts? They're not food. I developed them for my husband, Mark. I came from a family where they just poured pure salt onto their food. And I mean, you would just see this white salt all over his food. And it would be all over the plate and the floor and the table. I mean, I'd clear his plate away and there'd just be this sort of spray of salt all over the place. And so, you know, trying to break somebody's habits when they've been doing it for 25 or 30 years is just almost impossible. So I came up with salts that were blended with herbs and spices, so that every time he shook the salt cellar, he was getting, you know, half or 75% less salt and a lot of herbs and spices. And so I've got an organic herb salt, a garlic and herb, and a seasoning salt, and they will help you reduce your salt intake. You can mix your own blends if you want to. They're available on our website, and you can get them in most countries. Right, number 8, don't pin your hopes on dietary supplements. High doses of nutrients can both protect against and promote cancer. But scientists have found out that what you need to be doing is increasing the amount of fresh fruits and vegetables, because when you do crazy things like taking in beta-carotene in supplement form, they've actually found that it promotes cancer in supplement form. But in fruit and vegetables and your mangoes, beta-carotene and the carotenoids in your skin giving you the sort of yellow undertone actually show that you're protected against cancer. But your carotenoids are markers for all the other unknown antioxidants and nutrients in the body. We don't know all the nutrients that are in our body. So if we're going to take the known nutrients and we put them in, what about the unknown nutrients? The ones that we don't know, that are incredibly powerful, but we haven't actually discovered them yet. So the best way to increase your nutrient intake is rather with freshly extracted juices or dried juices like Barley Life, just carrots, ready beets, which is your dried beet, your dried carrots, and your dried barley juice. Otherwise, have freshly extracted and try and go for organic. I just don't have the time or inclination to be making juices all day long. Right, number 9, breastfeed your baby. Doing this for at least the first 6 months will help protect both the mother from breast cancer and the infant from obesity and other problems. And we know that obesity is a factor that contributes largely to cancer. If you need more on children and breastfeeding and feeding healthy children, I suggest you read my book, Healthy Kids, which is available from our website or any of the consultants that are on that. Right, what else can we do? Let's see some of the others. Again, here is another study that's been done. It says there is more evidence than ever that a person who weighs too much is more likely to develop cancer, a landmark report said on Wednesday. And forget eating bacon, sausage and lunch meat, no amount is considered completely safe. At the end of the day, it's not just the actual fact that you've got these carcinogenic properties, you've got the nitrites and nitrates in the bacon, remember that? It's the protein that's coming in with it. So you've got the carcinogen, but the protein is going to trigger it. So probably better off if you took the nitrites and nitrates and just ate them, didn't include the protein with it. I don't know how you're going to do that, but you know, if you want the nitrites and nitrates, at least the seeds will just sit there. Putting the high protein diet, and remember, more than one portion is considered high protein. Although this report from Nancy Helmich in the USA Today says that no amount of processed meat is considered completely safe. They actually, American Cancer Society says people are not paying nearly enough attention to the relationship between obesity and increased cancer risks. It also says that for every 1.7 ounces of processed meat consumed a day, you increase the risk of colorectal cancer by 21%. This is a wake-up call for people who eat hot dogs or pepperoni pizza regularly. They need to be looking for alternatives. Why put more meat on your pizza? You can actually have the most delicious pizza with no cheese on. I ask for a cheeseless pizza. I get the wheat-free based, cheeseless, and you may think, oh, that's revolting. But in fact, the flavors of the vegetables come through, and I put on capers and artichokes and tomato slices and fresh arugula or rocket, and then I pile fresh mashed avocado on top of it. In fact, I'm making myself hungry. Right, so there is much that you can do. I can go into some very technical information and throw wonderful names that you like, tributyl, TBT, and biological magnification in eating animal protein, and these wonderful things like polycyclical aromatic hydrocarbons and phenols and cresols and phenol and heterocyclic amines that are mutagenic that we find in all, again, processed foods, heated fats, fried foods. Then remember, the one thing that's going to make this actually take root and start to grow, remember the grass, is the animal protein. You need to keep that to less than 5% of your calorie intake. More than one portion is what will keep it, or less than one portion, or every second day, or eat animal protein maybe every second day, every third day, or once a week. That is going to keep it low. Increase the amount of fruit and vegetables by following the 5 steps, and basically there you have it. More than that I can't give you. Read the books that I've mentioned. Go online and just basically do it.